Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we are continuing our top 50 best games of all time with 40 through 31. All right, if you didn't see the first video, be sure to go back and check that out. And now we're going to get into the next 40. Now we've been doing this a little different. In the past, we've always done it, by the minute. We do 10 games at a time in 10 minutes. We're taking our time this time. We're slowing it down. We're really kind of getting a little bit more into each game. And then once we get into the top 10, I may have one or two friends join me for their top 10s as well. We'll see if they can get their list together. So let's get right into the number 40 through 31, starting with number 40, which is Anachrony. Anachrony is it's a time travel game where you're way far in the future. There's been some sort of disaster. There's another impending disaster, even worse than before, about to happen, and you as the players are going into the future, borrowing supplies, basically borrowing resources, bringing them back, using them, but you've got to pay them back. Otherwise, there ends up being a paradox, and the paradox causes additional problems for you. And the world can only handle so much time travel before you basically make things worse, than they would have been anyway. And so you're rushing against time. Also, the outside world is so toxic and in such bad shape that you have to wear these mech suits when you go out. And so you assign your workers to these mech suits, but you've got to be sure to power up the mech suits first. There's all this interaction and interconnecting pieces in this game. So you got to go out in the world to find a lot of what you want, but you also have to, spend time powering the mech suits up. You have to make sure you've got enough workers to do all that. And there's different, each worker, there's different classes of worker, as far as I think it's engineer and scientist and a couple other things. So all of them have their own jobs, and it's this really interesting, interconnected sort of set of game mechanisms that really make it a lot of fun. And it is brain burning, but once you get past that initial learning curve, it is a really good time. That's Anachrony. All right, number 39 is Star Wars Imperial Assault. Now this, just in the original way it was designed, is a one versus mini game. You have one player playing the Empire, everyone else playing Rebels. These are all Rebels created for the game. As you can see, you got these various characters that you can play as. They all have their own sort of abilities and different health and endurance stats and speed stats. They use different defense dice, all this different stuff that these different skill checks down at the bottom. So all that differentiates each of the characters. And there's that's right, I forgot that there's three different modes that you could play originally. You had the campaign mode, which was one versus many. You had skirmish mode, or maybe it was just two originally, and then eventually it became, you could also play it as a cooperative or solo game when they came out with the app. So that was all cool. Then you've got all these different bad guys in the game as well. Imperial guys. You've got the E-Web shooters, of course. You've got the Imperial Guard here. You've got your standard stormtroopers. You've got your Imperial officers, and everybody loves these probe droids that make all the funny noises. And you've got Darth Vader that can show up occasionally. I do have a couple of expansions in here. I don't think I'm trying to remember which ones. Obi-Wan is definitely from a expansion, and I think I might have this. Yeah, this is Chewie. So Chewie's from an expansion. Anyway, you've got the ATST over here that is not part of the expansion. That is an original from the original base game. And then the board itself is modular, which is really cool because then, of course, you have just a great variety of maps that you can have. The one pain in the butt is that there are so many modular pieces, is that it can be difficult to build the map initially sometimes, because you're trying to find the exact right piece and all that kind of stuff. So if I could find a better way to organize it, that would be great. You have all these different dice. I mean, that have, I love dice with multiple symbols on the sides to, that do different things depending on what's going on. And then all these different cards with different skills and abilities and equipment. And then the campaign, if you're playing through the campaign, the one versus many campaign, it has some somewhat branching story paths. I will say that I don't prefer the one versus many campaign, because it does feel like there's a little bit of a runaway leader problem, in that, as the winners get rewarded for winning, and then it sort of becomes easier for them to win if the people who lost don't make some corrections, and it just it didn't have a good feel to it. I much prefer the cooperative campaign, which again, you have to have an app for that. The app controls the Empire. You're still the rebels as you play through, but it is a lot of fun. And then the skirmish mode I've played once or twice, and it's enjoyable. There's no story, obviously. It's just straight up build an army and fight against each other, or build probably more like a squad, not really building a whole army, but you fight against each other in various maps, and the skirmish mode is really cool. That's Imperial Assault. Number 38 is Pax Emancipation. This is a cooperative game, mostly cooperative game, about the global struggle to outlaw slavery worldwide. It has a very historically centric, like it really focuses on the history, focuses on some of the stuff that was going on. Let's see, the board itself is built out of these cards. Okay, so you build the map out like that, and as you're playing through, I mean, this is a very rules-heavy game. It is one of the, for such a small package, it is one of the heaviest games I have, which I think most of the PAX games are like that. So the three factions that players can play as are the philanthropists, the evangelicals, or the Parliament. So this is about Britain going out throughout the world, basically enforcing their will on different areas, trying to outlaw slavery through these three various means. As you play, there is, once you get to the end of the main part of the game, there is an additional stage of the game that's optional technically. So the main part of the game is cooperative, and then once you get towards the end, these three factions actually start sort of flexing against each other, trying to gain the most influence, which I suppose is historically accurate, but you don't have to play with that stage, and I usually don't. I mean, granted, I mainly play this game solo, but when if I have someone playing with me, we just play the cooperative version of the game. You have all these things that were in the way of prohibition, of outlawing slavery, and for instance, well, I don't even know what that means. And there's one for Japan. Let's see if we can find. So in Europe, you have what was called the Terror. In Brazil, you've got Diezmo tax. So these are all barriers to freedom. In Western Africa, the Asante slavers. And in America, the Jim Crow segregation. So you have these type of things that are in the way. The different dice shown on them have to do with how you can remove these barriers. Eventually, as you're removing barriers and you're going through the game, you have your different workers here. You're using these boards for keeping track of your capital, your wealth, and your debt. You have multiple pieces that are out here, and as you spend money, it'll go down, and then as you do other stuff, it'll bring it back up. One thing I will say is that while the game is super complicated, the player boards do have these player aids right here on the player board, which is very helpful. You can see this is the basic game. I would say that the basic game is great for learning the first like maybe 2 times you play the game, the first 1 or 2 times. The advanced game is where it's at. The advanced game is, when I played the basic game, I wasn't sure that this was going to be worth it to deal with all the complex rules. When I played the advanced game, it was only, in my mind, just a little bit more advanced, but the depth it added to the game made all the complexity worth it. You have these the ships that are out here that you're going to be having to deal with as well. You have all kinds of terrible things that can happen, and as you play, it really is a tough game, but you are going to eventually start modernizing these areas. So the 13 colonies becomes the United States. The Ottoman Empire becomes the Soviet Union. Stuff like that starts happening, and eventually, hopefully, you get to the end of the game and you have successfully achieved your goal throughout the game. You have Eastern ideas and Western ideas as well that you'll be interacting with throughout the game. The White Rajas, the Sepoy Mutiny, Young Ottoman Secret Society, all this stuff, which really the event itself, all this is just gives you background on the event. The key are all these symbols that have to do with your ability to pass laws and stuff like that. And you are also dealing with the Bill of Rights and the General Will, and these big events that have to do with that affect the world as well. The American Revolution, the U.S. Civil War. So each area has their own major event. This is for China. You have the Xinhai Revolution and the Taiping Rebellion. So it's got all this history built in. This is for Japan, the Satsuma Rebellion or the Senmin Haishiri Edict. And it really has a lot. It teaches you a lot through all of the historical context here, but then also has a great game that is built into it as well. All right, next up we've got Maquis. This is number 37 on the list, and this is a solo-only game where you are playing the French Resistance. It has this one board right here where I believe you're in. Are you in Paris? I want to say you're in Paris. Anyway, doesn't matter. You're in France. That much I know for sure. And you have all these. These are the really difficult missions. These are 3-star missions. So you have these. You also have 1- and 2-star missions that you can choose from. You always have 2 missions total that you play. You got this board on the side that's tracking morale and how many actual soldiers are in the area, because before soldiers come in, there's just these police. And so here, so these no star, these are the ones they recommend you start off with. Then you have 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star missions. And so maybe we put this one and this one out, and so these will be our 2 missions that we're working through. It's got instructions on how you do that. You're going to have your people that you put out on the board, and as they go out, they always at the end of the day want to make it back to a safe house. So maybe I'll go there, and maybe I'll go here, and then I almost for sure I'm going to be safe getting back. As I'm putting those people out, though, we're going to be flipping over these patrol cards that are going to say where, so maybe actually that guy wouldn't be out yet, and we have a patrol that's going to go to the grocer, and so this guy goes out here. All right, and then I would put this guy out, and then the next patrol, it says it's going to Radio B, and so you'd have another patrol run out up here. All right, now the thing is, let's say that this guy had gone, I don't know, we'll say for whatever reason he was here, okay? And instead of Radio B, we already had this patrol here, and this patrol came here, all right? Well, now this guy's cut off because if he comes, he can't go through the grocer because there's a patrol there. And no matter what route he takes, he can't get back down this way because this patrol here, he can't go up through Pont du Nord. He obviously can't go through the Poor District. And so now he's stuck in this. So this guy is actually going to get captured. You lose him for the game. And so that's where the danger comes in, is completing your mission by going to the different areas you need to go to. Because all these different areas give you different things. And also some of them require you to drop stuff off for different missions. And you're trying to do that without getting captured and before the end of the game. Number 36 is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. This was a phenomenal experience. I would say once in a lifetime experience, except I played it twice. I actually loved the campaign so much with my wife that I then purchased another copy of the game and played it with my game group. And so Pandemic Legacy is probably the first really big Legacy game. Risk Legacy was the first Legacy game. Pandemic Legacy is probably the first big one. And this is a true Legacy game. You see a lot of games talk about being Legacy these days that don't have permanent, irreversible changes. Really, to be a Legacy game, that's what it is. It has to have permanent, irreversible changes. Otherwise, it's just a campaign game. And so with Risk Legacy, with Pandemic Legacy, you are playing the original Pandemic system, at least at first, and then as you move through the months, because you play from January to December, as you move through the months, additional rules get unlocked. Bad things happen. You know, the cities have a population I don't think there's population in that game. Population's in Season 2, which I just started. I believe it's the level of panic in the city. And so every time an outbreak happens in a city, panic increases in that city and makes it more difficult to get into and cost more to do things in that city and that sort of thing. And eventually cities can fall. You know, if they hit level 5 panic, then it's just complete mayhem in that city. And every time, I believe it's when there's an outbreak in a city that your character is in, they get a scar. And if you get 3 scars, you die. Your character, if you're using the scientist, then they're dead. You have to rip up their card. You can never use the scientist again for the entire campaign. There are certain ways to take cities out of play to where you don't have to worry about them too much. There's all kinds of really interesting things that go on in this game, but that feeling of having to rip up a game component really sort of makes it a much more visceral experience, because that's so unlike any, we spend so much time trying to keep our games in good shape. To have one that's asking you to destroy it is an experience unlike any I had up to that point. So that's Pandemic Legacy Season 1. We'll see if Season 2 manages to make it on this list next year. Like I said, I just now started. Only played the prologue so far. Hopefully playing the first month here very soon. That's Pandemic Legacy Season 1. All right, number 35 is Shadows of Kilforth, a fantasy quest game. This is it's a game where it's a pretty complex game. It's got a pretty thick rule book going on here, but it does have the player aids to assist, so that's always helpful. And you can see there's actually not a whole lot in this box. That's because the box is built with, A, enough room if you want to sleeve your cards, but then B, you can actually, there's 2 other, there's Gloom of Kilforth and then Call of Kilforth, which Call of Kilforth is not out yet. It just kickstarted a little while ago, but you can add all that to the same box if you want to. So when you're playing, you're going to set up the board with all of the, those are the dividers. All right, so you have these different locations. You've got the shrine, you've got this Serene Lake, Divine Heights, Imperial Forest, Fool's Den, all these different places. Some of them have abilities that that affect your hero and stuff like that. Some of them don't. They're all different type of terrain. So you build this map out, but then you also are going to have, so you're able to upgrade your hero. You've got these different skills. Woodsman, when you draw forest encounters, draw one extra encounter and choose one to discard. So you're more, you're more comfortable in the woods. You know what's going on in the woods more. You've got Thug, which is a level 2. Pay 2 gold. Your foe loses 2 health points. You've got Sound Mimic. You've got Slayer. So you've got all these different skills that you develop as you're playing the game. Let's see. There's all these plot cards that you're going to work your way through depending on what you got going on in the game. They add different let's see, so Scion, hold on. Okay, so here, these are all Scion of Sorrow. So this plot is what you're going to be working your way through if you're playing the Scion of Sorrow. All these cards here. You've got different ones. Reaver of Malice, so that's these cards here. And the whole idea is that you're working your way towards this final showdown at the end of the game with this big bad. You can get allies in the game. So you have these ally cards, you've got Dancer, Warlord, Dark Hand Assassin, Engineer, all these people that can help you along your way. And of course, a ton of items that you can gather to help out. Tobacco pipe, katana, so a wide range. Pepper pot, bow staff, all this stuff. Gunpowder grenades, a ton of really cool stuff that you can gather as you're playing the game. And then the different races that you can be are not just your typical fantasy races. You have vampires, but then you've got were-tigers, you've got spirit walkers, shape changers, watchers, veilborn, seraph, and human. So, and you see you have the male and female side. Vampire has both, were-tiger, so there's spirit walker, different versions depending on how you want to play as well, which is pretty cool. What else do we have here? Oh, right, and each character goes through their own saga. Okay, so these are the classes. Sorry. Yeah, so not only do you have different races, you have different classes. I thought I pulled the saga card. These are the class cards. Yakuza, Chevalier, Samurai, Diabolist, Lordless Bushi, Sorcerer, Choir Monk, and Ninja. So, and you can see as you start adding the other sets to this, it really would balloon out. But so here's with the saga. So as you play the game, you're going to be working your way through your saga, and once you get to the end of your saga, that's when you can finally you try to complete the game. So you have chapter 1, chapter 2, and so like for instance with this, to complete, spend 5 gold and 1 regale action, and you need to have these keywords as well on different items that you've collected. So you're not just randomly collecting stuff, you are trying to complete this different stuff here. And then you would go to chapter 2 of your saga, and then chapter 3, and then chapter 4, and then, let's see, is that? Yeah, and this is the finale for Haunted Pass. So a lot going on, so much variation in this game. I didn't even show you the encounters that happen in the various. You have encounters based on if you're in the plains, mountains, forest, or badlands. So there's, again, just so much to see and do in Shadows of Kilforth. Number 34 is Wingspan. Now this one is just a mega hit in the, everybody knows about Wingspan, but this game is fantastic. It deserves the praise in my mind. You are going to be playing, well, first off, I like that it has 2 different possible ways to score. One is more competitive, the other one is less kind of in your face and lets everybody kind of do their own thing, which is kind of cool. It has just really cool components, these eggs that you use a lot during the game. what the main resource is going to be is going to come from these dice. These dice provide the different food that birds might eat. You got, your grain, you've got your grubs, your berries, your rodents, fish. And so you're going to be rolling these and collecting food to help then gather up the birds. This is just the base game, and there are so many birds in the base game. I mean, you see 2 stacks of these. Every single one of these is different. It's absolutely amazing. They all have different stats and different abilities. It's really, really cool. For one thing, just that there's that many birds that exist, that many types of birds that exist. Over here, you've got some different stuff going on as far as... Let's get this. So this is going to be all your solo stuff, your Ultima stuff, which is great. The Ultima Factory just pumps out fantastic solo versions of games. And then here we have different kind of objectives, right? So players are going to be getting these in backyard, they're going to give you extra points at the end of the game in addition to whatever you manage to collect. And there's lots of different things here: breeding manager, historian, bird feeder, forester, enclosure builder. Lots of different stuff for you to choose from. Well, not really choose from, but that you can get your hands on and then complete at the end of the game. These are the different. So when you're playing, you're gonna have different objectives that you're gonna be going for as a group, or like that everybody's going for, and these get mixed up, and placed out here, and so round 1 and round 2 we're gonna have different things that you're scoring on, and every game they're gonna change because these get mixed up and put out. So that's pretty cool. It's not like every game what you're going to be going for ahead of time. Every game has, and you see you got 4 more out here, and they're double-sided. So what's that? We have 16 different objectives that could possibly show up on here. So every player gets this board. They're going to be putting out their birds on here, and as they do so, they'll be building out, a row of birds that live in the forest, live in the grasslands or plains, whatever that is, and live in kind of the marsh water area. And as you play, it gets more and more expensive to put the birds out here, but you're able to generate the currency to do that with some of your birds, and then of course their abilities trigger at the, when you get here, he's activate any brown powers in his row. And so if you have lined up a bunch of different brown powers, you might have a nice row of abilities that trigger all, back to back just from using that row. Lots of strategy goes into this game, but also it's fairly easy to get someone into it as well. Wingspan is a really, really great game, and my wife and I really love playing it, and I need to introduce it to my game group. My game group actually hasn't played it yet, so I think they'd be really into it. Number 33 is Roam and Roll. So this is one of the more complex roll and write games out there, if not the most complex. You can see, it's got a fairly thick rule book, so there's a lot going on here. This is the main board that everybody's going to be interacting with, and the idea is you're actually building Rome. It's, of course, very abstracted out, but that's sort of the idea of what you're doing. And then the players, there is an expansion in here, but the players can play as any of these different personalities, characters, whatever you want to call it. They all have their own kind of starting stuff. They all have their slightly different abilities. I guess this stuff here, their advisors are actually pretty significantly different. So that's where they really differ, is with those. And then they do differ also with some of the stuff down here as well. But as you're playing, you'll be underlining these to show what you've gained, and then as you spend them, you mark them off. And so that helps with, you're not having a whole lot of random pieces all over the board. You keep track of everything that you have right here, including what are the different resources in the game up here? There's, oh, that's right, wooden brick, that's what W&B, and then you can do stone, fish, baskets, jewelry. You just write the letters down here. So again, you don't have resource pieces all over the board. And you can use the back as a reference, so you can use one of the unused ones, as a reference as well. And then, you can keep track of your score over here at the end of the game and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, the advisors do some great stuff. But as you're building out here, and you can see if you have, this is the 1 or 2 player side, you have the 3 or 4 player side over here. That's a lot more space to kind of spread out and everything. You've got to deal with this wall, and you can't build a building halfway across the wall. And then there's these different hills that have to do with different stuff, different scoring and everything in the game as well. Let's see. You got these enormous chunky dice that I absolutely love, with, again, all kinds of different symbols on the dice themselves, which I'm a huge sucker for. I love that. This is how you're going to be getting different resources and stuff from the dice, and there are different god cards that can have an effect in the game. These are the different buildings that can be built. The shrine is going to take up 2 squares like that, and if it's entirely on a hill, you get, oh no, it must be entirely on a hill, and you can do 1 per hill. But then let's see, with the parade ground, it's going to take up 4 squares like that, and you can spend 1 jewelry to gain 3 soldiers, or to gain 2 senators, I believe is what that is. And let's see, each of these is going to, you get 1, I believe that's 1 point per adjacent army building. So all of them have different things that you got to take into account when you're building them, and you want to try to build them against, next to certain things, or not next to certain things. Lots to consider when playing this game, and a lot going on. Number 32 is Sushi Go. I keep it in this box. I don't even have the original box anymore. But Sushi Go is just a very easy to learn drafting game. And, so you've got these cards in your hand, and, you're going to look and see which one you want. And then you'll pick one, you'll put it face down, you'll pass your hand to the next player, and then everybody will flip their card over at the same time. And you're trying to collect sets. So with the Maquis rolls, whoever has the most, counting these up here, not the most individual cards, but the most on their cards, will get 6 points, and whoever's the second most will get 3 points, and everybody else, no matter how many they've got, get 0. With the dumplings, 1 dumpling is worth 1 point, 2 dumplings is worth 3 points, 3 is worth 6, 4 is worth 10, and a 5th one would be worth 15. With the pudding, you get no points whatsoever for pudding until the very end of the game. Then the person with the most pudding is going to get 6 points. The person with the least is going to get -6. And so all that you have sashimi, you've got chopsticks. I feel like there's we've got tempura in here. We've got different types of nigiri, egg nigiri, salmon nigiri, and where's the other one? Squid nigiri. So you've got these different types of nigiri. You've even got wasabi in here. So all these different sushi things going on. It's all about set collection, trying to find, based on what's being passed around at the time, where your points are going to come from. You play 3 rounds, and whoever has the highest score wins. And it is a really fun, really quick little game. And number 31 is Lords of Waterdeep. Now, the caveat is with the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion. You got to have that. I really believe, I don't believe there are many expansions that are truly necessary, but to take Lords of Waterdeep from being just a pretty good entry-level worker placement game to something that's really, really great, I feel like you need to have that expansion. So in Lords of Waterdeep, you are playing in the Dungeons and Dragons city of Waterdeep. You are one of the lords, as you might have guessed from the title, where you are basically hiring heroes to go out adventuring for you to complete different quests. And you have the quest up here, and then as you play, you're going to be building buildings that belong to you, but everybody can use, but you get a benefit from them using it. And you have the standard buildings that are always out here no matter what. And with the Scoundrels of Skullport, you have this additional area here that starts. You get the actual benefit is much greater than anything on the original board, but you get corruption for using it. And so you start to have this sort of push and pull with how much corruption is worth having, because depending on how much corruption is out there, where are the corruption skulls? They gotta be around here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. So the game starts with these corruption skulls on this board, and you can see there's 3 on each of these. And as they come off, all right, so now, let's say the board was full and just this one skull was gone. Well, every skull is worth -1 point at that point, at the end of the game. But if, let's say we had, now there's 4 skulls that are gone, all of this is still full, right? But there's 4 skulls missing. Well, then all the skulls are worth -2 at the end of the game at this point. And so it continues like that. Once skulls start coming off of here, all the skulls are now worth -3. So the more corruption is in Waterdeep, the worse the corruption is for everybody. And, it kind of represents the population getting sick and tired of the corruption. And then you also have the Undermountain that came with that expansion as well. It gives you a couple extra places to go, which is really cool. The quests are things like, produce a miracle for the masses, requires 2 clerics and 4 gold, or impersonate a Darbrant noble. You're gonna need a cleric, 2 warriors, 2 rogues, and a wizard to do that, plus 4 gold. And so all kinds of stuff like that. You have some quests that you can force people to do that are not really beneficial for them. These are the different buildings you can build. The Shadow Dusk Hold, and so this is the benefit that the person that uses the building gets. But every time they do it, the owner of the building is going to get 2 rogues as well. Or the Hall of 3 Lords. The person that uses it get this. The owner gets 2 victory points. And you can see how all of them have their own benefits and everything. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. These are the different people: the City Guard, the Silver Stars, Knights of the Shield, the different factions that you can be a part of that don't have a whole lot to do with anything other than player color. But you do have the actual lords over here. So this is one that you could be. At the end of the game, you score 6 points for each building you control. Or this guy over here. At the end of the game, you score 4 points for each piety quest and each skullduggery quest you completed. And so as you play, you're going to be kind of trying to do the quests that are going to help you the most, or do whatever the thing is that's going to give you those in-game points. Because you do it right, you get a lot of in-game points when the game is over, and blow past some people. But also, again, you got to be watching out for that corruption, because it is really, really easy to start taking some of these and pulling in a lot of corruption. Plus, there's quests. Oh, I forgot to talk about the intrigue cards. These are things that you can play against players. I mean, assassination. Each opponent removes 1 rogue from her tavern and returns it to the supply. For each opponent that could not do so, take 2 gold from the supply and place it in your tavern. Here's one of the mandatory quests. Here's conscription. Take 2 warriors from the supply and place them in your tavern. Choose one opponent. That opponent takes a warrior from the supply and places it in their tavern. And then some of these are going to have, here's one that has corruption on it. So there's lots of ways to end up gaining corruption. Some of the quests even can give you corruption, if I remember correctly. This one is a lot of fun when you have that expansion. So there you go. That was number 40 through 31. Be sure to come back as we continue the list in a week or so. And until next time, for Board Online, Board Offline.